And many of the traditional stories about the different clan groups, they came from very distant places and experienced great hardship. But their goal was to get to where they could be Dinétah, which is to be among the Diné. Among our people, the Diné, we have stories about our people coming into this area, which is the greater portion of the Southwest, and sometimes it's identified as the Colorado Plateau. But it takes in the area what is presently the Four Corners area. But in our traditional stories and that, the boundaries basically was everything west of the Rio Grande and everything north of the present-day Sonora Desert to the south, and then everything from the Pacific coast east, and then everything from the what they call Tapana'a, which would be the Book Cliffs that extend from Colorado all the way through to present-day Great Basin and on through the state of Nevada and on into California. Those were the boundaries, and originally all of that was referred to as the Nebuchadnezzar, which would mean that the soil underneath the feet of the people that are known as Diné. And the Diné, when they first came into the Colorado Plateau, into the greater portion of the present-day Southwest, there probably was not very many of them, maybe just less than 2,000 at one time. And they came from the east, and they came across what would be present-day Kansas, and approached the first sacred mountain, which is the Mount Blanca over in Colorado. From there they went and found the headwaters of the Rio Grande, and then they followed the headwaters of the Rio Grande over the top of the mountains and came to the place what is now present-day Gunnison, Colorado. And then they followed the Gunnison River all the way to the Colorado River, what is now at Grand Junction, Colorado. A lot of the original and traditional dwellings of the Diné, the early Diné, who were the Towering House people, and the other ones identified as Tejikina, which is the Rock House people, and Kintachini, the Red House people, and all of these different cliff dwelling, original Diné. And there were other people in that lived in the area as well, and there were numerous groups of people, but many of them came from distant places, all the way from the Pacific coast and possibly even north, what is now present-day Canada, and they came to be Diné. And many of the traditional stories about the different clan groups, they came from very distant places and experienced great hardship. But their goal was to get to where they could be Dinétah, which is to be among the Diné. And it was, I believe, my personal belief is that the Diné, as they have told in many of the stories, is that they had leadership, very strong leadership. And so some of these smaller groups were survivors of various catastrophes and things that they may have experienced. And so they were looking for places of safety. And because the Diné were organized in a way that they provided protection for many of the people, they came. And it was some of the stories in that are told is that they were over 1.5 million Diné at one time. And they all occupied various places throughout the Colorado Plateau and the greater portion of the Southwest, and they became Diné. And so we have over 140 clan, 145, sometimes they say there's over 150 different clan groups, and many of them are still around. We have about 83 people or clan groups still easily identified. But there are many more that either moved away or they became another group of people themselves. But it is that they came to be among the Diné, which is Dinétah, which is the place where the Diné lived, and they wanted to be a part of that family. And they became Diné, and they became family, which is Keh. And all of these different clan groups we identify with, and everyone is related in some way by the clan system. And it is very important to understand that we don't have all of the clans that we used to have at one time, but the foundation was family. That was the most important thing, and to this day, in the traditional way, is the most important thing, is to pull people together and have them united and doing the things that brings them joy and happiness and peace in their communities and in their lives. And so those are the things that we are told about Diné, the land area that was occupied by the Diné. And it has to be understood that there were other people in that never became Diné, that also lived in that same area. And so they didn't become Diné, and they are still around in the area. There are so many people, the Supai, the Yavapai, and the other Pueblo groups. Now, Pueblo group, we always refer to them as Ayakin, which would mean people that built their structures and that out in the open. Whereas the Diné, it was cliff dwellers, Tsechikin and Kia'ani, and those types of people that lived in structures that were into the rock formations. And the Diné lived in those structures for many generations until some time in the history of the Diné. And it is that the holy people said, don't live in those houses that are in the rocks. When the earth moves, they crumble down and they harm you and kill you. Go out into the open. Watch the animals and the insect and the birds. See how it is that they build their homes so that their homes are safe. And so it was that's where we come to the living in the hogans and some of these other structures. But those structures, there's a story behind each one of them. And so that is the ways of our people and some of the stories and the oral histories of our people. And those are the things that we are told.